Oh no, I mean just I mean as far as the my point about that was that there are websites that devote themselves to reading, writing authors, creating community around that. Some of those websites, some of the representatives from those websites were at the conference, and they were talking about their frustration with the information coming from the publishers. And this also goes back to the standards, not necessarily about DRM or EPUBs or anything like that, but just purely XML or how to get the information up on their website and all those um, automation problems. So Buzzaroonie goes in the same category, I would say, as some of these other websites, and starting to think about how that information is uploaded, and maybe even uploaded as a category of websites. Like hypothetically, right? If you put your standard style sheet, your standard XML style sheet up, and you announced that, you're like, I'm taking this is what we're doing. If you want a list, this is how we want your XML format. Hypothetically, you could set some sort of standard yourself, because it seems to me like it's that open. I don't know if you guys would agree, but I mean, it seems to me like you could just step forward and say, hey, this makes sense to me. That's what it seems like. So,
This one comes from my past life and having listened to Tim before, and the fact that at like 5 years ago, there was a division between those east of the Hudson and west of the Hudson. And those east of the Hudson now are pretty much owned by Europeans. Did you find a lot of that going on in the fact that there's sort of rules for the New York publishers, the international publishers, and then there's rules for the rest of us?
I personally didn't find that. I think that what I found is what we've traditionally dealt with for years, that we're small to medium-sized publishers in Pub West, and a lot of times we have to wait for the big guys to shake things up, and that's I think. But I didn't see an international division between a change or a stopping point between international or New York or California or Oregon or Colorado. I didn't see that. What I still see is sometimes we have to wait and see, digital rights management. If Random House said we're not going to do this tomorrow, we could all follow suit. But if a small publisher in Idaho said we're not going to do it tomorrow, I don't think it's going to make as big of an impact. There are a lot more, exactly. There are a lot more of us than them.
Actually, that does make me think of saying something about what Victoria was asking and what Charlie said. 16 years or so ago, when we started talking about issues of standards in publishing and the internet, HTML, it was particularly in relationship to libraries who were concerned about the continuity of information, meta tags, metadata, and that was before XML. One of the things that happened was that we got together with librarians, publishers, particularly university publishers, because we were concerned about nonfiction and the continuity of information, and talked about setting standards. There's no reason, following up what Charlie just said, why we in Pub West couldn't, in fact, talk about setting standards. As you were just saying, Victoria, I could decide tomorrow, this is the standard for Buzzaroonie. Now, if Buzzaroonie were big enough, that might make a difference. But Pub West actually is quite big, and there's no reason why we couldn't talk about setting standards as an organization to deal with these kinds of questions. Why not?
and actually, I think that's. I mean, that's pretty exciting, and also I think that if we did decide to do that in some organized way, we might. That's really exciting. Yeah.
Because we're interested in the book, whether it's the topic, whether it's me, book as a book, or design, or whatever it is, where the big publishers are commoditizing the whole element of books.
Actually, I don't think that's entirely true. The big publishers obviously are trying to make a ton of money, and they have a different business model, different business structure, a different employee base. They care too. you don't get into publishing, especially now, unless you care. They're caring about the book, they're caring about the market, they're caring about reading, they're caring about what's coming up. They're thinking about it. So I think that's more fair.
And one of the big emphases at the conference was community, like you were talking about, and it's community. Having the readers be the community, and the publisher, I think, as you mentioned, being nothing but the facilitator of that conversation, and that's a big shift, I think, away from the commodity model and towards, or maybe it's just the commodity model in a different way. You could probably argue that pretty well, but that shift, I think, is an important one, and it does require some appreciation of book as book. I think you can't make a good community without having that real appreciation for the book, I think.
We actually have an executive meeting with Pub West tomorrow, and I will bring this up, and we'll start putting together a panel, and we'll start putting together a way of reacting to this through all of our publishers. I think it's an excellent idea. I think that's why Pub West is here and does what it does. So we'll quickly react to this. So wonderful. I love these because we all get ideas from it. So Susan had a question.
Yes. I regularly ride the bus here in Portland, and I regularly fly to LA, where I have 2 sons. I'm always looking around and waiting to see someone reading an ebook. I have yet to see it. I see a lot of people reading paperbacks. I see a lot of people reading library books, and I see especially young people with their iPhones and their thumbs texting. I'm waiting, so I question that 50% statistic.
Well, if we go back to the 2 to 3% of the population, and we look at this room, I know Ken has a Kindle, so that probably is close to our statistic in this, and Bo has a reader. No.
I actually spent quite a bit of time in waiting rooms last week. I took a book and I have my iPhone. And I spent a heck of a lot more time on my iPhone than I did reading my book. And a lot of what I was looking at on the iPhone was book content. It was not something I had anticipated. Some of that content I was downloading on my iPhone because I was really short attention span. I didn't have it to go into the book. So I get on my iPhone, it's like, maybe this will be a time to check out that issue 1 of Bone that I know is out there on the phone. So, yeah, you can add me to that percentage.
2 points. One is if you sell 1 book 1 year and you sell 2 books the next year, you have 50% growth. And then the second one that we haven't talked about, but it's also from the creative perspective, how your creative process, I talked about this in the Wobble, how your creative process changes with the technology. I know they're talking about this in comics. If you have your iPhone, you scroll through the pages. If you have 1 panel at a time, basically a splash page, what that does to the reading of the comic. It's fascinating, right? And that's going to go through, that's across the board. And I don't think that I don't think the creatives, the authors are necessarily talking about that right now, but it's in there. It's in the hopper someplace.